Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation here on Big Country Politics. I am Manny Diaz. This week we are joined by our special guest, Miss Brittni Hill. She is a concerned citizen regarding Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance. Brittni, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, honestly.
Yeah, well, this is a topic that, I guess it's a little different. Certainly here in this area of the country where it's more conservative, faith-based, folks perhaps don't want to entertain the conversation that we're going to talk about today.
Right, and I think that's one of the big problems is that people think that if you are conservative and Christian that you can't be outspoken on this. And it kind of lends to the idea that if you do speak out on this, then you mean to say that you are pro-choice, which is not the case.
Let's give the people a little bit of context of who you are and your stance on all. I think we kind of know your stance on the Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance, but first and foremost, tell us a little bit about yourself and of course, your stance on the current ordinance that's on the books.
Okay, well, I'm just a normal person. I'm not, I'm a mom, I'm married, I'm currently getting my master's degree in writing. There's really nothing that I am trying to do in a political sense or in, like I'm not running for city council. I am just a citizen that is concerned about, the way that we are restricting access to health care for women. I think that's why I really got involved in this initially, is because I don't have a history of activism. I don't have a history of advocacy. But when this starts to affect the care that somebody is able to receive, especially when we're already in sort of a healthcare crisis for pregnant women and for the children that they are carrying, then it becomes an issue that we all need to get involved in.
So when it comes to this ordinance that was passed in November of 2022 by the people of Abilene, what was your biggest concern? I mean, obviously it sounds like it's the ordinance itself. Is it the fact that it's pro-life? Or what would you say is the biggest concern from your perspective?
The biggest, well, there's not one biggest concern. There are a bunch of concerns that are equally kind of weighty. There's no provisions for rape and abuse, which if as someone that has been affected by these things, I know that it can be very, very difficult to even contend with that sort of trauma to begin with. And when you come in and take away a woman's right to be able to deal with that on her own terms, you further compound that trauma. I've also been concerned about the difference between women dying in childbirth in rural areas and in urban areas is there's almost like a 10-point difference. So you'll have like 18 to 20, sometimes 24 women dying in urban areas. And in rural areas, you'll have women in the 30s dying out of 1,000. And for every one death, there are 100 injuries during childbirth. And this is making doctors leave the state of Texas. These ordinances are making doctors leave. They're not providing the care because their hands are literally tied. They're faced with $100,000 fines. They're faced with time in prison. So we're also seeing a drop in the number of students enrolling for residencies in Texas. And that is also another concern, because if they're not doing residencies here, they're not staying here.
Well, seeing that the Abilene City Council voted to modify language in the ordinance back in December to allow the possession and use of abortion-inducing drugs in the city under specific circumstances not associated with abortion, was that enough for you?
No. Honestly, I understand that their hands were tied. And I know that there's only so much that they could have done as far as amending it. That's why my goal is to actually get it repealed. And I know that's going to ruffle some feathers. But there are better ways to advocate for women and for children and to support women to have healthy pregnancies and continue those pregnancies than to come in with this sort of legislation that prevents access to care. Like, you have to give women options. And that's why we see in other countries where there are really low rates of abortion, they have very comprehensive social programs that deter a woman's need for one. And that's what we need to be focusing on if you want to lower those rates. Deter the need for an abortion. Okay, don't restrict the access, because then that impacts the medical care.
Interesting. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, more with Brittni Hill, concerned citizen, regarding the current sanctuary city for the Unborn Ordinance, right here in Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Welcome back to Big Country Politics. Our special guest this week is Brittni Hill. She is a concerned citizen regarding the sanctuary city for the Unborn Ordinance. Brittni, you have established a local group in opposition to Abilene Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance. Tell me, what is your goal in all this?
My primary goals are education and to empower people to speak out. One of the things that I've noticed just being affected by this and kind of getting involved is that the number one thing that I'm hearing is, I didn't know that's what I voted for. People had no idea that it was going to restrict care, medical care. They had no idea that there were no provisions for rape. Some people didn't even know that it passed at all. And that's a problem. You know, if people don't know what they're voting for, if they're just told, do you want to save babies? Yes, we absolutely want to save babies, but there are better solutions to doing that that will bring the rate down and keep it low in a stable way, rather than coming in and forcing it, trying to force it anyways through restrictive legislation, because that's not going to work.
When it comes to a woman having an abortion, just to, you know, it's perhaps it might be just an inconvenience, perhaps to raise a child at that point, versus having an abortion because it might take her life. You know, where do you stand on that? Where does this group that you're initiating here, where do y'all stand on something like that?
Well, we have no particular stance on that. That goes back to being a medical decision between a woman and her doctor. And a woman's reasons for needing one are private. So whatever my opinion is on why someone is getting a procedure like that, I don't have a right to interfere and question her as to what her motives are if it's private between her and her doctor. Personally, I'm pro-life. I would never be able to get an abortion because it personally is not something that I would be okay with. But when it comes, that's my choice, by the way. When it comes to other people, they're free to make the choices that are the best for them, because I understand that my decision to be this way has been determined by my life. It's been determined by the fact that I wasn't able to have children until I was in my mid-30s. It's been defined by, you know, a history of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Everybody's got their own stories for why they've come to these conclusions.
Let me ask you this. There's talk of you and your group wanting to put this ordinance back on the ballot. What can you tell us about that, and certainly how y'all can go about that?
Well, we can get it back on the ballot with a petition. So we would need to gather signatures in order to do that. I'm here speaking primarily for myself. I'm not speaking for generally other members of the group specifically, but the group is for spreading that awareness so people can understand what it is has been done, and be more aware when we do put it back on the ballot what their options were and what they're voting for. Because if we have restrictive laws concerning a woman's health care and her access to it on one hand, and then we have comprehensive programs that will empower women to not need to pursue those options, then the one that is going to be the best fit is the one that is the most compassionate.
Do you think there would be enough support to not only get it back on the ballot, but to overturn the current ordinance?
I do, and I'll tell you why. Everybody has a mother. Everybody has a sister, or a niece, or a daughter, or somebody in their life that is female that is going to be affected by this. When you look at things like the different medical conditions that can be that can occur in a pregnancy that can cause the loss of fertility or the loss of a major bodily function, or increase the chances of death. Under these ordinances and some of the newer rulings from the Texas Supreme Court and from the efforts of our Attorney General, they wouldn't be able to receive care in these circumstances. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at people that have been saved previously that would not be saved under these new ordinances.
Let me ask you this final question. Abilene, we already touched on it. Abilene is a very faith-based conservative community for those who believe life begins at conception and that faith and religious beliefs need to be considered when it comes to abortion. What is your message to them?
You can absolutely be Christian and be pro women's rights in the sense that women deserve to have access to medical care. They deserve to have autonomy as far as, if they've been raped, that is a very private thing. And you do not have a right necessarily to quiz a woman about whether or not she has been raped. What I'm seeing is that it's created such a divide in where people are thinking that if they do speak out, then they are going to be vilified or they're going to be, kind of cast out of their social group or whatever the situation is. But these are also people that are pro women's rights. And I think that if you have people that start to speak out and start to say, bad law is bad law, and this is not something that makes me less of a Christian to say, then it really brings into focus what the needs of the community are and how we are responding to them.
Brittni, appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me, Manny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, for Brittni Hill, she is a concerned citizen regarding the Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance. I'm Manny Diaz. This has been another edition of our Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. We'll see you next time. God bless.